Surely she had some odd alarms blaring in her head, for sure. But you're so young and these people are so powerful that you would question yourself and your own judgment before you would question theirs. And hi, I'm glad to be back talking about this book with you today. We are in Maureen Callahan's Ask Not about the Kennedy family. And we've already had quite an introduction. She brought us in through the story of Carolyn Bessette and her relationship with JFK Jr. And we just got through, of course, the most famous day involving a Kennedy, which was the assassination day of JFK. She walks us through Jackie's perspective on that day. So that was heavy. Today, we've got heavy in a different way. This chapter deals with complex issues that cast aspersion on our former president, but also seem to be in line with the truth of how things operated. And so as we deal with these things, I would just warn you that there are definitely sexual topics and even potentially criminal sexual topics. And I'm not seeking to make light of them. I'm also not seeking to do a therapy look at what happened. I am trying to walk through this in the way that she does, through a historical lens and also with an eye toward the women. So that is what we're doing, but I just want to put forward that warning that if you've been a victim of sexual violence, or if those kinds of topics are difficult for you, then you may want to just take heed and either avoid this episode or be mindful and be ready to hit pause and skip some parts. But this chapter today gives us a look at two interesting women, and so I'm interested to dig right into it with you guys. The first one, her name was Mimi Beardsley. We're going to jump in right where Maureen Callahan jumps in. She says, on her fourth day at the White House, Mimi Beardsley got a call at her desk inviting her to drinks with the president. Sort of a welcome party for new staffers. It sounds so innocent, doesn't it? And she buys it hook, line, and sinker. She has no clue. She truly is an innocent, virginal young woman who is excited to serve her new president. To understand this story, I want to introduce you guys to a man that I didn't mention in the last episode. There is really not time to dive into every possible rabbit trail in each chapter, but back on page 28, if you're following the book, Maureen introduces us to someone with a very ominous sentence. It's Dave Powers. He shows up at the emergency room, and it says, it was Dave who woke the president in the morning, who tied his necktie, smoothed his feathers, and was always able to diffuse the tension in any given room. So far, he sounds great, like an assistant. Jackie really loved Dave, and this was largely because she had no idea what he really did for Jack Kennedy. So I actually wrote ominous when I read that sentence. Well, here we go. Next chapter, and his ominous nature is already showing itself because he is the one who is inviting Mimi Beardsley. She says, where do I go? And this chapter introduces him as the unofficial first friend. So he is just setting up social introductions for JFK when he's president. Mimi looked around at the other women in the secretarial pool. No one else seems to be checking their makeup or dashing off to get ready. And her hair is actually still damp from the afternoon swim, which is a wild, unexpected treat. Remember, this is her fourth day at the White House. She's a young secretary. She's been invited, new staffers. She's got a little desk. She's super patriotic and delighted to serve the president. She's already been asked to join the president for his regular midday dip in the pool. What could she do? She couldn't say no. It was spring 1962. Mimi was fresh off the train from Farmington, Connecticut. This girl is green. I mean, she is just young and inexperienced and not at all ready for what is about to happen to her. She actually went to the same finishing school that Jackie Kennedy had graduated from. At this point, Jack Kennedy is 45 and she is 19. She feels unsophisticated, unglamorous. She feels like she has a lot of scrambling to do to catch up with this metropolitan, amazing new world in the White House. She feels like she's a kid kind of getting to finally be with the grown-ups. And in a way, she is. This was an unusual White House, she kind of thought, but this is an unusual president. We haven't had a young, hip president like this in memory. So of course things are going to be looser. Of course things are going to be pretty cool. This is how she's thinking of it. Have a daiquiri, Dave Powers tells her. He's filling up a large glass from her from a pitcher. Remember, she's 19 and she's not a drinker. So the sweet daiquiri is already making its way down and she's already buzzing. She's amazed because she's a big fan of Jackie, which makes sense because she had come from the finishing school where Jackie had grown up. And she'd even written a school paper about Jackie Kennedy. So she genuinely was just a fan. She looked up and admired Jackie. Imagine this. Would you like a tour of the residence, Mimi? It was the president standing over her, offering her a tour of the private portion of the White House. Wow, yes, of course she would. She looked up to Jackie, and so she at first starts going through the house, and she's amazed because she's heard so much about Jackie's chic style and her breeding and her sophistication and the way she loves beauty and design. And she had even watched the televised tour that Jackie did. And this is on YouTube, so you can watch this very tour. I pulled up part of it and have watched part of it, but it was an ambition that Jackie Kennedy had taken on. The White House was kind of starting to show its age when they took residents there, and so Jackie had spent money and had been criticized for it initially to renovate and refresh and give new life to the main residence of our nation. And it was something that Jackie personally took a lot of pride in. She chose the colors and the dishes and the fabrics and really wanted it to be a reflection of beauty on the nation that she loved. And so Mimi had watched that tour, which had been televised, and people had initially criticized Jackie for this renovation and thought, oh, you know, she's wasting taxpayer money. But then once the tour was televised, people were really amazed by how beautiful she had made the White House. And they realized, because her televised tour did not only show off the fancy new digs that she had done, but it told the history of our nation. And so she had put herself into this. So Mimi is excited because she's going to get to see the personal space that's just been updated of this woman that she loves and the president that she's now working for. So this all feels amazing. She is so excited. And she notices, though, that there's a curtness to the tour. She wants to linger. She wants to notice the wallpaper that's depicting scenes from the American Revolution. And she's wanting to see each of the features that she had admired. But he says he was the world's least enthusiastic tour guide until this, he said, opening the door, is Mrs. Kennedy's bedroom. Did they not sleep together? Mimi didn't understand. She looks around and it's an exquisite room. She's amazed by the blues and the baby blue blankets and the soft white linens and just how lovely everything is. There's silk. It's just exquisite. She thinks it is a lovely room, but it's confusing. This is a very private room, JFK says. And then he was behind her, his breath on her neck, and she felt woozy. Was it the drinks? Is any of this really happening? He moved to face her, pushed her down. Now she's being undressed. In not much time at all, the president is inside of her. Haven't you done this before? Mimi had been kissed once in the 8th grade. No, she hadn't done this before. Are you okay? She said yes, but she knew she was in shock. He finished, got up, and redid his pants. The whole thing, you guys, listen to this. This is her first sexual encounter of any kind. The whole thing lasted less than 3 minutes. He never kissed her. Then the president pointed to Jackie's bathroom. "If you need it," he said, and he was gone. She walks into the bathroom and she's again in this world of beauty. She's admiring the cotton balls and the ceramic jar and the pinks and the black and cream colors and the way the palette is so lovely and everything looks so expensive and beautiful. And she thinks, what would Jackie make of her, this 19-year-old intern whose husband had just, what had he done with her? Mimi hadn't said no, but she hadn't said yes either. When she thought about it, days and weeks and years later, well into her 60s, she still didn't know how to define it. She's going back through her memory of which action was taken by which person, and she's young. She didn't expect it. There's alcohol involved. He's powerful. He is the extreme boss in her life, right? Not just her personal boss, but he is the president of the United States. There's definitely power differentials here. She looks up to him. She's sexually inexperienced. She has no idea really what even fully happened. Short of screaming, she'd later write, there was nothing she could have done to get him off of her. This reminded me of David and Bathsheba. There was a whole thing about this last year in the Christian kind of Twitter sphere. But whether or not you call what David did to Bathsheba rape, and this situation struck me as very similar. What is a young, inexperienced woman to do in the face of being called for by a leader that she admires, that she respects, that she thinks well of, that when she's walking into the room, she thinks there's no way he could ask this of her. And so she has a, 30, 60, 90 second period of time with which to completely reorient her brain, her body, her decision-making, everything to comprehend even what's happening. And so wherever you fall on, yes, it's rape, no, it's not rape, you do have to sit with this. We have to grapple, all of us have to grapple with what do we do with willful sin, even when it's by our heroes. Because he clearly was in the wrong. Whatever you believe in your worldview that her response ought to have been if she didn't really want to, all of us can say, is there consent? She's technically an adult, but there's alcohol involved, there's power involved, there's job involved, there's the unexpected nature of all of this. And so she's left grappling with, the president of the United States wants me. I'm just a 19-year-old girl. I don't have anything to offer him. And yet here she was, Maureen Callahan says, washing off blood and semen in the First Lady's bathroom. Would you like to come for a lunchtime swim? Dave Powers is inviting her again. This is the Monday after a long weekend that Mimi had spent alone. She had been thinking about these questions. What did happen? What is he thinking about me? She finds out he's just returned from spending the weekend with his wife and children in their country house in Virginia. So she starts to feel, well, he wants me to come swim. How could I refuse him? So she gets up from her desk. She makes her way over to the locker room. And get this, you guys, this is so weird. The locker room has many, 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 many swimsuits, all different styles and sizes at the ready. Why were there so many women's bathing suits? His cabinet was all men. The only women in the White House, well, girls and women, were secretaries. But this was treated as totally normal, the president needing company for the afternoon swims that soothed his bad back. Oh yeah, soothed his bad back. She is young, she is inexperienced, and she's got this dreamy idea of, well, he took me in, and so he's probably been thinking about me all weekend, and he needs this relaxation every day in the pool. And she feels so self-conscious. She wonders if anyone else can look at her and tell that she's not a virgin anymore. She wonders if anybody else would be in the pool or if it's just going to be the two of them. But when she arrives, the president is floating on his back. He barely acknowledged her, and two female White House staffers were splashing away. They were apparently regulars. Dave Powers was there too. She stepped into the pool and made her way over. She was trying not to show anything on her face of her expectations or disappointments. And after a few moments, he says, "Do you have a nice weekend, Mimi? How are you enjoying your job?" Mimi didn't understand. I mean, of course she didn't understand this blasé way of treating what she had been through with him and everything that had happened. She says, was he being distant to throw off suspicion? Or was this a fluke? Or she wonders, had I been so bad, so frigid or immature that he had no desire to be with me ever again? She wished she had someone she could talk to about it, but who would she talk to? Who could she trust with a secret like this? Who would even believe her? "Stay for supper, Mimi," the president says. She gets invited up to the residence. Jackie Kennedy was not home. She was not in the residence. Have another daiquiri. The second encounter would set the tone for their relationship. Mimi would be welcomed upstairs only when the First Lady is away, and it's her job to remind him of simple pleasures. They never discussed big stuff. And I thought this was an interesting detail. She did not feel embarrassed to wear the same dress to work 2 days in a row. She saw it almost as a special privilege that she was the president's favorite, and she wanted the other girls to know it. So Mimi has taken a path of acceptance of this new reality and embracing it and trying to find her way through. So that's how she got through it. Then we meet 20-year-old Diana de Vegh. Now, remember, Mimi is 1962 in the White House. This is 1958. This is someone that she just happened to go on a date with one of Jack Kennedy's volunteers for his senator campaign. He was going for re-election for the Senate seat in Massachusetts. And so one of his volunteers comes to dinner with Diana, and this is how Jack Kennedy grabs a seat next to her. He says, "Give me your seat," he said to James, "so a tired old man can sit next to a pretty girl." She, in her head, is already calculating, he's far from old. He's young and charismatic. He understands youth of today. Kennedy keeps playing the same thing. "You young people will set me straight." And so he starts up a conversation. Now, something interesting that happens here is that Mimi, he almost demeans by never discussing anything big. He never even draws out her mind. Diana is different. Diana, he spends time talking to her. He drives her to and from rallies and spends time courting her in a way, courting her mind, to the point where she couldn't tell if he was making a pass or not. So, I don't know, as I've thought about this, I don't know if this was just his way of relating to a different sort of girl. I think that's possible, that Diana, he could somehow read and know that she needed more drawing out. She was naive, and she was also very well bred. And she had no intent of having sex before marriage. She knew good girls don't do that, and certainly not with other women's husbands. So she was not going to do this. And so he sits he sits with her on drives back to her college and listens to her as she talks about the Middle East or a book that she's reading. She's sharing her opinions, and he's actually listening and making her feel that it matters. That is different, distinct from how he treated Mimi. Mimi, he demeans, and he lets her know that all she is to him is just a quick swim, a quick hop in the sheets. Diana, this goes on for so long that she has no clue. Rally after rally, she's cheering him on. She starts to think that maybe Jackie Kennedy isn't actually in love with him, that maybe they're going to get a divorce, that maybe he is thinking of her, or maybe he's thinking of her as a wife. And so she starts to think, I am a good girl with good breeding, and I could be a good wife to him, and I could have children with him. So she's got this romantic hero image in her mind of him for sure. They never discuss Jackie. She doesn't know, do they have a special arrangement? Is it just platonic between them? She thinks it's platonic between us because he has never made a move. But one night, Jack invites her back to his apartment, and she's actually a little bit shocked because she felt like it was just crappy. It was cheap, there was plastic, there was a little TV, they're eating not good food. It seems like stuff's that's just been picked up from charity shops, and only the bed is nice. Everything else looks hastily thrown together, and she's just really surprised. The only thing that gives her any clue that JFK lives there is that there's an extensive collection of books that include economic topics as well as like sexual topics and just all variety of literature. But he stands in front of her. He's got a serious look on her face, and suddenly she knows. He gestures towards the bedroom. "Let's go," he said, and she went. Like Mimi, there were no kisses, no professions of love, and like Mimi, she was a virgin, no more. Mimi, so we're back to Mimi. 4 years later, Mimi didn't know about Diana, but she quickly realized that Jill and Priscilla, other staffers are also frequents in the pool. She realizes she's not the only one. Now listen to this. I'd love to know, if you're reading the book, if this section suddenly brought to mind someone from modern culture. I'll share in a moment. He needed daily scalp massages, rubbing ointments and conditioner put into his thick brown hair before press conferences. Senior male staff would often walk in on them and all act as if this was a perfectly normal way for a teenage typist to be interacting with the president. To me, this reminded me of the embarrassing and partly sexual grooming characteristics that Jeffrey Epstein used. He would test out girls, and so would Ghislaine Maxwell. And there would be like this escalating level of familiarity, but they would test with something almost weird. And this feels like that to me. Like, why? Okay, full disclosure, I was a 19 or 20-year-old intern. I interned for the governor, Governor Mike Huckabee, when I was in college, and nothing like this ever happened. Never. I went to briefings, I went to committee meetings. We collected data and compiled it for the policy folks, and I got my photo with him, and I met him a couple of times, but I interacted mostly with staffers. That's what a political intern ought to be, is that I was learning policy, I was learning about how the Capitol worked, I was learning about the governor's interests in various policy issues. So that's what an intern typically does. And I had a great experience, absolutely nothing inappropriate ever. But this is desensitizing, not just the typists. Do you see that? The teenage typists are being desensitized by being asked to like massage somebody's scalp, which is just creepy. But also it's desensitizing the male staffers who are walking in and just thinking, okay, this is no big deal. Because Jack needs that to be no big deal, because if they find Mimi in Jackie's bathroom, he needs it not to be a nuclear issue, right? That's going to take him out of office. So there's like this rapidly sliding scale that starts with these little bitty weird, partly sexual, but not exclusively sexual activity that suddenly goes, boom. So this made me think of Epstein. This made me think of the grooming tactics of someone who is very skilled. And perhaps with Diana, he wasn't skilled yet, but by now he is perfecting the art of taking advantage of young women. Here's what Mimi is telling herself. Maybe she and Mr. Kennedy have an understanding. The Secret Service agents never blanch at what's happening. Maybe everybody sees that I'm really good for the president, that I help him relax, and I just try to help please him, and I don't ask anything in return. She is counseling herself like the best she can. She is finding a sane way through this creepy and disgusting and abusive and devaluing set of experiences that she's had. Whenever Dave calls, she answers. She never makes plans. It says she never even really made friends because this was all too big of a secret, and she just wanted to be available to the president. It didn't seem like a sacrifice to her. If anything, she felt special. She felt singled out. The one thing Mimi did not like to think about was the children. She put it out of her mind. She convinces herself that none of this matters. It also didn't matter to her that the president never kissed her. He never told her he loved her or cared about her. It was okay. She was just 19 and a college student, and he was 45 and the married leader of the free world. Who was she to complain? So Diana had been his cheerleader through the campaign, but now it's 1960, and he is at the White House. He's won. And she wonders, will he forget about me? One night she gets a call. Come see me at the Carlisle. It felt like a secret romance on Manhattan's Upper East Side with cold martinis, the famous President of the United States on the other side of the door. Could it get any more glamorous? But she runs into campaign Jack, not romantic, desirous Jack, and she is shocked by it. He was only trying to get her into bed. There would be no whining, no dining, no romance. His attention would be on other things. There would only be fast, technical sex with Jack Kennedy. He was a man on the move. Jack decided he couldn't live without Diana, and he begs her to please move to Washington. Your dad's a famous economist. I'll get you a job anywhere you like. Please just come here. But she was being pressed by her boyfriend, which this is kind of weird, I thought. Her boyfriend is the only other person who knows about her relationship with the president. Very strange. And he's actually a journalist at Time magazine. So her boyfriend is a journalist who knows that she's sleeping with the president of the United States irregularly. But he asks her, which this is it's probably self-serving too, but it's a bold move for a boyfriend to ask. He says, don't you want more for yourself than being the president's plaything? And she says, nothing will come of it, but he does have a hold on me. And she was hardly the only woman that he had a hold on. Mimi starts to realize that once Jack realizes he has a hold on you, he seems to think less of you. And she felt these little digs, these little humiliations that made her feel that she had really nothing to offer the president. Mimi gets warned by an older mistress of a senator, Senator Smathers, who had been on the Med. Remember sailing on the Med with Teddy and JFK and Senator Smathers, these three. Well, his mistress, Senator Smathers' mistress, takes her aside and says, you are too young to be here. And Mimi feels humiliation. She feels shock and shame because she felt like she was finally sophisticated enough to be at these cocktail parties and these fancy things, and she is really humiliated. And she says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And Senator Smathers' mistress says, you're going to regret it. All of a sudden you'll turn around and you'll be 25 and you won't have a life. I thought this was really interesting because this woman is trying to give her an out. She's trying to say, look, sweetheart, you don't understand what you're walking into, but I do. And I'm literally ahead of you on this path and I know where it leads. But Mimi doesn't have the awareness that that's what this woman is trying to do. And instead, her thinking is, really? Name me one other 19-year-old who is sleeping with the President of the United States. So Mimi is sold out to this. When we met Mimi, she's virginal, clueless, excited to see the residents, in awe of Jackie. And at the end of this chapter, she is hardened. She is unable to take good wisdom from somebody who is trying to tell her the truth. And she is enamored with a man who has never even kissed her. We have a president who collects playthings and seemed to have disdain for all of them. They all felt it in various ways, and even the way that Mimi spoke the idea that once he sleeps with you, he seems to respect you less. I thought that was really interesting because that is what happened with Diana. That is her story. Diana's story was one where he did seem to volley back and forth with her about ideas until she gave in. And once she gave in, he didn't seem to have much use for her. Not in the campaign, not for her mind. He's using her physically and wanting her physically and wanting to possess her, and definitely not expressing love, concern, care, not having any affection, but also just ready to discard once he's gotten that physical release. I'd love to know what you guys think. How does this chapter change your perspective on JFK? Does it tarnish the image? Do you find within yourself that you're fighting back against it? Like, that can't be true. These girls can't be true. Because I'll tell you right now, you could go and find more stories like this. These two were not the only ones. So even if you doubt one particular detail or quote, these are representative of the very kinds of things that JFK did. So we need to grapple with this truth. Is it a David and Bathsheba sort of relationship to you? How does that analogy land for you? Any other observations you have about either of these women? Mimi with her innocence and kind of, he never even seeks to pursue her brain or her mind. He literally just treats her as a quick object of his release. Versus Diana. Was that due, what do you think, to personality? Was that due to the fact that it was 4 years earlier and he realized by the time he's in the White House that he doesn't have to do the whole months-long song and dance? What was that? I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything. If anything about these videos is difficult for you to hear, difficult for you to watch, you have suggestions, I am open to that. I've just started building this read-along part of my YouTube channel, and so I would just ask you to offer me your input, and also please like, subscribe, and share these videos, get them into other people's ears. You know, if you guys have a friend who's interested in Kennedy or who you talk about topics like this with, maybe shoot them a sample and let them see if this is something they are interested in, and then that could be something that you guys can talk about as well, because these stories are fascinating. So I appreciate you coming along for this journey, and I'm excited to read more. The next chapter, Marilyn Monroe. So I look forward to getting into that with you all. Take care. Have a great day. Bye.